southern interior of BC MP Alex Atamanenko is doing a tour of the riding and talking about GMO, which is genetically modified organisms. Alex, can you tell us the pros and cons of this?
Well, first of all, regarding the tour, this is, we're very fortunate to have Lucy Sharratt, who's with the Canadian Biotechnology Action Network, as our main speaker, along with April Reeves of G3BC. Lucy is the most, probably, I guess, the leading expert on this technology in Canada, and she outlines clearly what is involved. The crops that are currently GMO, some of the potential threats to our environment, in regard to this technology, and basically, it's there to dispel any myths and to answer people's questions. And the forums we've had have been very successful. I've been instrumental in leading the fight against GMOs. I had my bill in Parliament, 474, which was finally voted down because of the tremendous pressure of the corporate biotech industry. And this is something that I emphasize when I speak at these forums, is that the tremendous amount of clout that these people have in influencing decisions that take place. I mentioned the revolving door between Monsanto and the U.S. administration. I mentioned the 50 or so meetings that corporate lobbyists had on the Hill with Liberal and Conservative MPs, and prior to the vote that eventually defeated my bill. And my bill was very simple. Bill 474, it was just to look at the economic impact of farmers of introducing new genetically modified organisms. Lucy also will touch on the fact that right now that's genetically modified alfalfa, we have to put a stop to this, because there's a possibility that this will be introduced into the environment in Canada. It's already been approved in the United States. If this should happen, this could spell the death bell or the death note for our organic industry, because as most people know, alfalfa is used not only by the organic industry, but it's used by the conventional farmers as a nitrogen fixation. It's made into pellets. It's exported. So we have to work hard now to try to make sure that this doesn't happen, because once you introduce a GMO into the environment, there is cross-pollination. So conventional alfalfa obviously would be contaminated by genetically modified alfalfa. So the forum basically is an information session. It's based on fact. It's based on the research that Lucy has done. I touch upon the fact that any research, most of the research now on this is done by the major stakeholders, companies, and so that when our government comes back and says, well, everything's science-based, well, often they base their science on research data that's published by companies such as Monsanto. We don't have we have hardly any independent research. I mentioned a professor from France, Sarah Lini, who actually has done research and has noticed that there are some adverse effects to health of rats in regard to liver disorders and other problems. He has recently been able to obtain data from Monsanto, which he said is flawed. So there's a lot of questions. Our government hasn't been using precautionary principles. They've basically been buying into the idea that this is supposedly good for us, and yet the only two traits that so far, after 15 years of this technology that are developed, is that crops are either herbicide tolerant or they're insect resistant. If they're herbicide tolerant, it means you can spray the heck out of them with a glyphosate, which is, the brand name is Roundup, and it'll kill all the weeds, but it won't kill the crop. If they're tolerant to, if they kill insects, there's a special gene that's inserted from another organism, from a bacteria, so that when a bug eats corn, that bug dies. These are the only two traits right now that exist in this technology. There's no GM research, genetic modification, that has increased yield or brought about all these other promises that the industry told us would happen many years ago. So, and what we're finding is that when crops are sprayed with glyphosate, the weeds now are becoming resistant to this chemical. So much so that I've just recently read that soya, which is one of the GM crops in Canada and the United States. They're developing a new type of genetically modified soya that will not only be resistant to glyphosate, but also to 2,4-D and another chemical. So imagine that this crop will be sprayed not only with the Roundup, but also with Agent Orange. And that's the reality of what's happening. So obviously there must be other ways that we can get about feeding the world.
So this is obviously not going to be the first time or the last time we're going to hear about this. This is an issue that's going to be ongoing for quite some time.
It's an ongoing issue, and we also have on the horizon, we have a genetically modified salmon and a genetically modified pig, which is currently being developed at the University of Guelph. And this issue is huge. Should the genetically modified pig be released or be approved for breeding, this could have a tremendously negative impact on hog farmers. Let alone what would happen if the genetically modified salmon is released. The research, although the research is done by a company in the States, the eggs are scheduled to be developed in Prince Edward Island, and then the eggs will then be shipped to Panama, where the fish will be produced and then sold in the market in the United States. Now, we've already talked about contamination of farm Atlantic salmon with wild salmon. We can imagine what would happen if some of these genetically modified fish, and they'll be developed to reproduce twice as fast as they normally do, if there's contamination with other fish. So alfalfa, the fish, the pig. Also, there's currently an apple where genes are kind of reversed, is being developed that will not brown. The BC fruit growers, the organic growers, all have spoken out against this technology because if there's cross-pollination and contamination, this could be very negative impact on their markets.
So aside from Googling GMO or attending your forum, how can people find out more?
Well, they can certainly contact my website, contact my office, either in Castlegar or Ottawa, and also CBAN, which is the Canadian Biotechnology Action Network, which has the up-to-date information on this technology.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Alex.
You're welcome, George.